You are listening to Feed 44, the official podcast channel of the Center for a Stateless Society. C4SS is an anarchist think tank and media center. For more information, please visit c4ss.org.
Mr. President, Chelsea Manning would like a word. By Nick Ford, posted on c4ss.org on January 22, 2015, and read by Mike Godzina. As usual, the State of the Union address was a top-to-bottom massacre of verbiage. Every year, the English language struggles to survive an onslaught of what can only be described as total verbal hangover from a year of rhetorical binge drinking. Somehow, some way, one man manages to stand on a platform, while two other guys sit awkwardly behind him, clapping every now and then, and sum up a bunch of nonsense over the course of an hour or more. The results are never pretty, and picking out something objectionable is easier than shooting fish in a barrel. But if I had to pick one of the most egregious quotes from Obama, it's this. Quote, "We defend free speech and advocate for political prisoners and condemn the persecution of women or religious minorities or people who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender." Mr. President, do you know who Chelsea Manning is? I mean, you seem to know who she is. You've said in the past that Manning is guilty of, quote, breaking the law, thus implying that she deserves her sentence of up to 35 years in prison. And you've also commented that the Pentagon assures you that her conditions are, quote, appropriate and are meeting our basic standards when she was put in solitary confinement. This despite the fact that, at the time, she was being, quote, confined for 23 hours a day to a single cell measuring around 72 square feet, equipped only with a bed, toilet, and sink. And the fact that it was an illegally lengthy pre-trial detention didn't seem to matter much to Obama either, despite there being pretty good grounds for it being a human rights violation. As the Center for Stateless Societies, Nathan Goodman wrote, quote, UN Special Rapporteur on Torture, Juan Mendez, investigated the conditions under which Manning was held and concluded that the 11 months under conditions of solitary confinement constitutes, at a minimum, cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment, in violation of Article 16 of the Convention Against Torture. If the effects in regards to pain and suffering inflicted on Manning were more severe, they could constitute torture. Given this history of knowing ignorance, how could Obama not know about Chelsea Manning? Obama's history of protecting other big political dissidents is also abysmal. Just ask Edward Snowden, who had to flee the country to make sure he wasn't detained, like Chelsea Manning, before he released information to the public that the government found embarrassing. Is this the sign of a free society? I suspect Obama does know who Chelsea Manning is, but for some reason she doesn't count as someone who has been persecuted for her struggles as someone who is transgender, despite the fact that during her pre-trial hearing, Marine Corps Master Sergeant Craig Blanus defended the pre-trial detention on the basis of Manning's gender dysphoria because, quote, "That's not normal, sir." So does persecution of transgender people only count when governments aren't the persecutors? Is Chelsea Manning not a victim of persecution, much like the inordinate number of other trans people locked in prison? And what is Manning if not a political prisoner who has been locked away for up to 35 years because she helped an undefined enemy in some nebulous and apparently impossible to argue for way? At the heart of this is Obama's ability to both recognize and obfuscate. Sure, he knows about Chelsea Manning, but the question is whether or not he cares. And with statements like the one he made in his address, we can see the answer before us quite clearly.
You've been listening to Feed 44, the official podcast channel of the Center for a Stateless Society. C4SS is an anarchist think tank and media center. For more information, please visit c4ss.org.